Hey, it is Emily from Difference in Skill. I am going to bring you a Weiss deck profile. Today I'll be doing... Man, I haven't done a Weiss deck profile forever. So today I'll be doing a DC newspaper deck profile. So I had this deck during late summer actually. And then I kind of just finished in mid-September, so didn't really have the time to do this. And of course, maybe I'll try to speed up because these deck profile takes a bit longer. So I have Sharu sleeves because she's nice and cute and I like her and stuff. Okay, so let's start with little zeros. So this is a red-blue deck. I don't actually play that much blue. So to begin with, I played 3 level 0 Sharu, and they have different art, but they're the same card. So what she does is, if you have 2 or other newspaper characters on the field, she gains 1,000, like an extra 1,000. So basically, she's a level 0 35. Pretty good card to start with. You kind of need a field, or you kind of need a field to actually get her effect to start activating. So sometimes the condition's kind of hard to meet, so you can't just play this out solely. But it's a nice card. Level 0 35 is pretty decent. And then next I played 3, I think it's Loving. Yeah, it's Loving Rika. Okay, so what does she do? So she's level 0, she's 1,000, but she's a change. So her change activates, so when my opponent frontal attack this card, I can pay 1 cost, send this to memory, and I can change into this card. So basically, I'll talk about this card in a bit later. So basically this card is level 0 change. It's fairly good because it's an on-hand change, which the condition might be kind of hard to meet, but the thing is, this card is actually quite sustainable if you have this on the field. This a bit lower because it's kind of shiny and glowing because of the light. So yeah, like I think this is quite a good sustainable card at level 0 because your opponent might not want to frontal attack you because they don't know if you have the card in your hand, right? And if they attack you, basically they have to deal with a level 1 at level 0. And even though it's only like 6,000 is not bad for level 1, right? But I mean, most zeros don't exceed 6,000 by themselves. With it needs quite a bit of support and help to actually exceed 6,000. So most of the time, and the other thing, most of the time they can't take it down, right? And the other thing is that like they have to frontal you, right? So after you change, they are still in like they're still frontal attacking you. So they're basically destroying their own level 0s. So this card is quite sustainable. Of course, the thing is, some people just attack it frontally, like they don't give a fuck, right? So like they don't care if you have it or not, and if you happen to be buffing, then you just kind of lose out on that. But most of the time, most players are not like that ballsy in general. So this card is quite sustainable. Like even if they side attack you and you don't change, it doesn't really matter because you basically your unit don't die at level 0, right? So you have another unit to attack with and gain stock. So that's actually quite the benefit. And even at level 1 sometimes, well at level 1 you probably wouldn't actually pay 1 to change anymore because if you have it in your hand you would just maybe play it out, right? But that's one thing. It's very good at level 0. So I played 2 red Himino Brainstorms. This is quite a good brainstorm. So this is pay 1, rest this card, and then brainstorm 4, and then for every climax you get, you salvage 1, right? Now this is quite good because you don't need a discard card, so it's actually a +1 red card. Of course, the downside is this is not a spammable brainstorm, meaning that you can only activate this once per turn, unless you have 2. But it's a good thing because it +1s, and those are actually fairly good. It's a fairly good brainstorm. Like a salvage brainstorm is like quite good in general. You can only salvage newspaper, I think. Well, no, it doesn't say that, but it's a newspaper trade, so that's good because the deck is newspaper, right? Okay, I played 2. Let me put this lower. I played 2 Sindera Himinos. This card is quite a funny card. It's not actually quite bad. Just really thirsty, so you take a sip. So anyway, so she has 2 effects. So the first effect is if I have 5 or more cards in my hand, this card gains 1,000 power. If I have 4 or less cards in my hand, then she gives global support to all newspaper. Yep, she gives global support to all newspaper. So not too bad. I mean, level 0 3,000 like beat stick is not too horrible. Sometimes it becomes a vanilla beat stick basically. And if it's not a 3,000 like power attacker, then it's basically a global 500 support, which is actually very good. Now, of course, it's quite a funny effect because it activates depending on your hand size, and you're not always actually below 4, or you're, in fact, a lot of times you're kind of above 5. Like, especially early game, if you want to use this, it's actually not as useful. But it's not actually quite bad effect, because at late game, if you happen to use a counter and you just happen to, because you drop a card, right, you might fulfill a condition for this card, and all your characters gain 500 power, which might be actually necessary to run over your opponent's cards, because it will mess up with their calculations. Or sometimes, like, during late game when you just need 500 extra, this card just happens to fulfill the condition, then it's not too bad, right? But I'll go on to actually why I play this card, besides that. So, I play one promo Sarah account booster. So one reason I played this is because it looks nice, which is possibly a reason why people would accept. The other reason is because it's blue, and I actually don't have that many blue cards in this deck, which means that I'm kind of just trying to put blue cards in there because I need blue. Her ability itself is actually not too bad, because her ability is tap herself, and then you can choose one of your newspaper characters for 1 turn, and they gain 1,000. That's not too bad ability. In fact, like the extra 1,000 can help you run over quite a lot of things, so it's not that bad as a support as well. But I kind of play it for like non-competitive reasons for stuff. So anyway, moving on to the last of my level 0s, I play 2 Himino standard support. So this card gives 500 power to basically cards in front of it. And her other ability is you can choose to co-op yourself 1 and rest this card. And then after that, do you have to do anything else? Okay, so you just co-op yourself 1. And then you can actually pull out the Sun Himino from your waiting room and call it up. Now, this is not actually too bad ability, because the co-op 1 ability is sometimes pretty useful if you're kind of stuck in a level and you need to level up. This is a good way to do it. It gives you a +1 because you get 1 card back. So it's quite good as well, because I mean, even if this card's not winning, or if this card's direct attacking or anything, it gives you a stock, it does damage, and it's also a potential support. So it's not too bad. It's quite a good ability in my opinion. Like, it's not like it gives you a card that it might not be relevantly useful, but it doesn't really matter because it'll generate stock and it'll generate attack basically. Your opponent's forced to attack it at some point, so it kind of helps you defend for damage as well at the same time, and it's a possible support. So not quite the bad option. And then lastly, I play 1 really standard support. So it's a Sarah, and it gives 500 in front just like this, and it doesn't have any other effects because it's just a vanilla. Why I actually don't play 3 of the Himino and actually no Sarah, it's just because once again I need blue and I'm kind of lacking, and I found that like because I don't play so many blue, the standard like support Sarah is actually kind of useful to just fulfill the color conditions. Now my deck actually doesn't use that many blue, so I'm basically just playing just enough blues in my level 0s to fulfill a condition. Now, of course, there are some better level 0 blue cards out there, but one of them's promo, like the ones I think that are really good. One of those promos, so it's quite hard to get, and the other one's just kind of, the other one's not a newspaper trade, so I'm not really considering it. There's some other ones that kind of just, I think there's a 2/5 newspaper that when it dies you can pay 1 and send to memory. That's not bad as well, but I just rather not do it. Well, the other thing is because I like Shiru more, so I just go with the flow. Okay, so moving on to level 1s, I play 4 of the Rika that I mentioned earlier that gets changed into from the level 0. Okay, so her own ability is whenever a card is tapped or rested, oh, not rested, whenever a card is attacking on your turn, you can add 1,000 to this character. So if you attack last with this card, it will gain 2,000, so it will be a 1/1 8,000 when it attacks. And the other second ability is it has Encore. So it's hand Encore, so you just dish 1 card. Quite good, quite sustainable. If you get it out early, you basically win the level 0 game. Like if you change into this, you basically win the level 0 game. And even at grade 1. Even at level 1, it's quite sustainable just because it hits 8,000, which can run over quite a bit of things. And to give a climax, it can run over a lot of things successfully, and as encore, so it's quite sustainable. Basically, you don't really have to worry about stock, but hand size might be an ideal problem, but you don't always have to encore. So the next one is I play for the animated Rika, which doesn't look as pretty. 2 of them are shiny, if you can tell, and 2 of them are not shiny because that's just how I kind of poke them. So her ability is for every other newspaper character on the field, she gains 500. So if you have a full field, she's a 1065. Just quite good in general. Like, these are kind of like, they're self-explanatory. Like 106500 is quite good. Run over a lot of things. It's better than the standard vanilla, and that's all you really need to know. So moving on to the last of my level 1s. I play 2 support alloy. It's the first of the blue cards that actually requires a blue card in the level zone or clock zone. So her ability is all the cards in front of this card gains encore ability, so basically everything I play in front just now becomes sustainable because they get hand encore. Her second ability is pay 2 and rest this card, and then I can deck refresh. Now, this ability is kind of gimmicky. It's quite a utility thing. It's quite good in my opinion because if you ever feel that, if you ever get into a situation where you're like at a climaxes but you still have a lot of, your deck is still pretty full, then you can basically self-refresh. You don't take a refresh damage, which is pretty good as well. It's quite situational. It saved me from some games, like because I was bad and I used all my climaxes or anything really early, and I would have just took 1 billion damage. The deck refresh is pretty good. It's kind of costly in a sense, but because 2 costs at late game, it's kind of big sometimes, especially when you need to play units to like sustain and win the game. But it's quite utility. I like it. It gives encore, which is actually quite the nice benefit. Moving on, I still want level 1, so I play 1 counter. She's just standard 15 counter, but she also has a second effect. So she also has a bond. Wow, actually, so when you play this card, you can rest it, and then you can search for a level 2 version of her. You can search for this card, which I'll talk about a bit. So it's not bad. So if you ever actually need to pull that unit out, then and this is like a free salvage for it. It's like a free search, so quite good. And it's also 15 counter, so it doesn't really have the demerit. So moving on to level 2s. Play 2 Rika level support. There's a lot of Rikas in this deck, I notice. So she's just a standard level support. Gives 500 for every level your character in front is. And her second ability is when this card is played, you can check the top card of your deck and just put it face down. Now this second ability is pretty useful. It's quite useful for other decks as well because other decks kind of require top check, but this specific build, like newspaper build, don't really need to top check anything, so it's not really a big deal. But top checking is quite a good utility because it sometimes just helps you decide what attacks go first and what doesn't. Because if you see a big trigger, you might want to attack with something with lower soul damage to avoid hitting cancel or anything. And sometimes you might want to attack it with the bigger soul damage just because you want to go for one-hit wonders. But the second ability is not that bad. Definitely not the best, but definitely not the worst. I play 2 level 2 Himino bombs. So this is level 2 bomb suicides. It's quite... I like these actually. It's quite good in this deck as well because at level 2 game it sometimes can't take out everything, but like level 2 bombs are quite good just because if your opponent has something sustainable at level 2, you just take it out with a bomb or anything. Sometimes you just get there at late level 1 game and use these, quite useful. I would actually play more if I had, but they are promos, so it's actually kind of hard to obtain. I play 1 Himino as I showed earlier, and she has a climax ability. I basically only played this for the extra climax ability and the searchable, and because so basically when I need it, I search for it. it's a nice option to actually be able to search for. So this has a gate combo climax. So when the combo gate is played with this one, you may, if your front row only has 2 characters or less, you may discard 1 card and then deal 5 damage to your opponent. And then after that, so the 5 damage is cancelable, so of course, to make it fair, of course. And then afterwards, all characters in the front row will gain 15 for the turn. Not a bad card. The 5 damage, since you have to have 2 cards in the front row, so it might be kind of a downside because you can't do 3 attacks. But you can kind of just treat the 5 damage as the 3rd attack. And sometimes if you need to do like, this is really situational because like, of course not all the time you would want to restrain yourself to only having 2 attacks, right? But like sometimes if you just need to do damage and just try for the 1-hit wonder, this works pretty well. It gives all your front row 1500 extra, so it becomes pretty sustainable as well. Of course, by itself, it's not that good of a card. Normally, you wouldn't play it if you're not planning to activate the effect, because it's only 218,000. Even though if you activate the, of course, if you activate the effect, then it becomes pretty sustainable because everything basically gains 2500 due to the climax card, without any support. So moving on with the other level 2s. I'm getting hopeful. I'm getting like a dry throat now. I played 2 level 2 Saros. 2 of them shiny, that's why I did different art. Okay, so what does she do? So if you have 2 or more characters in front, she gains 1000 permanently, so it's a 2/2 9000, and the second ability she has Encore. Very sustainable at level 2 because it's a 9k and it has Encore, so even if it dies to like some really high power or whatever, not really a big deal because you can just Encore it. With support it becomes like a 2/2 10k with Encore, so quite good as well. And of course when you're at 9 or 10k, you're in counter range. Your opponent is in like a counter range that they might not be able to run over, especially if their level 2s aren't as high power, or if they change into something early without any support, then it's quite dangerous for them because it doesn't really matter if even if they kill you, it's not a big deal for me because I can just Encore. I played 3, maybe a little too much because of the lack of blue, but part of the reason why I'm playing 3 and not 2 is actually because I'm lacking the color, so I'm kind of expecting myself to actually clock one of these and actually put it into my level zone. So that's just one thing I want to note, like point out as a note. So for the last of level 2s, I played 2 level 2 counter, so 2/3000 counters, pretty standard, not really going to it. I wish there was a blue one that's newspaper, but unfortunately they don't have one. The one that they do have as a blue is pretty situational, and I don't like to run it because you need a top check, and I don't really want to risk my unit dying because of that. So moving on to level 3s. So I play 1 Blue Sarah counter. Level 3 Sarah. What she does is she gains 1000 power when you have 2 or more newspaper in the front row, which is pretty simple at very like small condition at late game. So she's 11k base, quite good in this game. I'm not gonna put too much effort into talking about it. Her second ability is when she comes out, you can search your deck for 1 newspaper and add it to your hand. Very good ability because you can search for other level 3s to play with, or just units that you need. So quite a strong ability. I only play 1 of it because basically because it doesn't heal. I would consider 2, but I don't exactly play enough blue to kind of make use of it. So moving on to the other level 3s, I play 3. One of them is Sign, of course, Apple Signs. I play 3 Rikas from the trial deck. So what she does is she heals. That's a really good reason why I'm playing this already. The second effect is when this card attacks, you can top check, and if it's a newspaper, she gains 2000. The second part is not that bad of an effect either, because if you top check successfully, which the chances are pretty high in general, then it becomes a 12k attacker without support yet. So it's not that bad, but the main reason why I really play this card is because it heals. That's really the major reason why a lot of level 3s are played, so I'm not going to really talk into too much. It's a nice card as well, I like the art. So moving on, and I don't know if I have enough time, so I might have to go into next. part. So I played 3 level 3 Sharu, one of them assigned as well because I got lucky and pulled it. So she heals as well, major reason. But in addition to that, her second ability is quite good, and I'm gonna stop the video here and come back. Hey, I'm back, and back to the point where I'm talking about 3 level 3 Sharus, and so going back to her ability. So she has a climax energy with a 2k1. So I'm just gonna show that here. The 2k1 climax energy. What does she do? So when you activate this card, you can pay 3 costs. Select 2 cards, 2 of your cards, units. I forgot what they're called actually. Characters. And for this turn, they gain the auto ability of ping. So basically, when it attacks, your opponent will have to take 1 damage. So and she gives it to 2 units. No, I think it's actually herself. Yeah, it's herself, and then 1 other front row card. So basically, you get the ping 2 times on your opponent. It's a fairly good ability. It's kind of costly. Very good late game finisher if required, because 2 pings is actually pretty good. Especially sometimes if your opponent's at 3-6 or something. This is a really powerful ability. Then this ability can stack, so you get 2 of these. You can pay the cost twice, and then you can throw it on each other and stuff. And then so each other character can basically ping, like each character can ping 2. So basically in 1 turn you can ping 4 times if you have enough cost. And of course you have 3. If you have 3 of these on the field, then you can ping 6 times. But not exactly everyone will have the cost to do that. So I mean, pay 3 itself is a pretty big cost. The ability is quite good, but it's kind of costly, so you don't really expect yourself to use this more than like... You basically expect yourself to use this once at late game. And like, you don't really expect effects to be stacking, but you know, sometimes you just happen to have the stock to do it, and it's a good idea to do it, then do it. Okay, so moving on to my climaxes. So I play 4 of the Hemio gates because just because the synergy is with this specific gate, even so they're the same gate actually, even though they have different art. I play 4 of these because the synergy is with this card specifically. Even though I don't activate the effect quite a lot of times, I just put 4 of them in case I need to actually use it. So whenever I need to use it, then it's there, right? And then I play 1 more additional gate, and then of course it can be any gate, so I just played the one that looked nice. And then for my last remaining 3 climaxes, I played 3 of the 2k1s. 2k1s are really good. Nothing much to explain. Play this one because it synergizes with the level 3. So yeah. And just gonna put some thoughts and just gonna put a bit of comments in this deck. This deck is not bad. It's pretty vanilla in a lot of sense. It's quite sustainable at level 1. Quite sustainable at level 2 as well, just because at level 2 and level 1 you have like a lot of cards with encore ability. Actually level 1 you don't have as much encore abilities, but like basically at 1-0 cost that can hit 65 and above, and you have 1-1 encore, so it's the whole level 1 game is quite sustainable. At level 2 you have bombs, and you have a 2-2 encore with quite a high power base, so it is actually a very sustainable level 2 as well. So in general this deck actually hits pretty big at their respective levels. Of course at level 3 you don't hit as big. The 12k is fairly big, but it's kind of inconsistent, so I wouldn't really put that into perspective, but it does have the ability to hit into the 13s and so far with just 1 level support. And with no climaxes, of course. So it's not really bad in that respective. Although I have to say the level 3 game is probably where the deck is a bit slightly more like weaker. And this deck also has gimmicks. Like it has the nice gimmick of deck refreshing when you like to, as long as you have the card. And of course I talked about the random global support. That can come in handy quite a bit of times as well. And of course this deck has quite a nice brainstorm. The only downside that I really see that deck don't really have is they don't have a searcher. They don't have one of those pay one cost each 1 card and search. this is probably what kind of needed. Level 0 game is fairly sustainable. It's not that bad. I kind of wish I had the better level 0s, like to replace the Charus, but not too big of a deal. Like I can actually play a runner, but I just like Charu better, so I just don't really bother with the runners. But of course, the downside is playing a runner is that they are not newspaper trade, so you're kind of out of trade. But it's being out of trade for just 1 or 2 cards. It's not really a big deal. It could affect the level 3 a bit because you need a top check in newspaper to gain that additional 2,000 power here. But also not exactly the biggest deal, but could happen. Like personally, I don't think playing just a few cards out of trade would really matter, or it would affect the deck too much. But people differ their opinions here. And so this wraps up my DC3. Yeah, this is pretty much all DC3. DC3 newspaper waste deck profile. And I'll be back with more things to talk about. I'll actually be talking about more waste and hopefully something about ZX. So see ya.